Good morning, students. Today we are going to study about the topic the challenge of cultural diversities. The challenge of cultural diversities. We shall concentrate on this topic. Understand? The first of all, let's see these cultural diversities will start from the community life. Understand? Now you know very well that the culture which the human being learns or about his learns the culture, learns the traditions, the norms, and the human being had a very strong attachment with his own culture, own religion, and his own culture, own religion, or his own values of his cultural values. One is associated with the culture. Understand? So now here we are going to see that a cultural diversity. It means that now in society all over the world, the society is varies. Societies vary from societies to society. In what? In terms of the culture, in terms of the beliefs, in terms of the culture, in terms of the beliefs, or in terms of the economy. In different terms, the culture varies from culture to culture, society to society. Understand? And now everyone is associated with very strongly associated with his or her own culture, and this attachment is a strongly now bond, a strong bond. What kind of the bonds? A emotional bond. Emotionally, we all are strongly attached with our community. Whatever the community, whether the caste, family, nation, caste, family, religion, these strongly everyone is now associated with that. So here we are going to study in this topic this culture, this is and are these cultural diversities. Cultural diversities are the threat to the nation. Are these are the divisives? Are these are the cohesive, or these divisives, or the vociferous forces works as a force of the disintegration of a nation? A lot of the questions we are going to count here about the culture. Understand? About these diversities, and particularly this in respect of how every country in the world had its own diverse culture, own diversities, different. But in our country, this diversity now diversity is the very unique, because here there is a unity in diversities. Understand? Unity in diversity. This is the very new discovery for the world. Understand? This is the one of the example for the world. We have the diverse culture, diverse language, diverse geographical setup, and the diverse costumes, food habits, different respect in the different respect. Their diversity exists, but even then, there is a unseen string which now connects the entire country together. Which now binds just as the garlands, the beads in the garland. Beads is attached or the knitted with the string of the garland. Similarly, the unseen thing is that existing in our society or in the Indian culture, Indian lands, that unseen factor is here. A lot unseen factor which now works for binding and for creating the unity and the integrity of the nations. So now even then, this is the general views of this diversity. But here we see that how should we see these diversities? Whether because the diversity is in itself a divisive factors, fragments of the culture. Understand? So these fragments of the culture exist, and everyone or the every social segments have the very strong bond with their culture. Each and every individual and the social segments have its strong bond with their own culture. So despite that, how to create a balance, how to make the balance, and how to create the harmony and harmonious environment amongst these different and factional culture. How this? How this is the? This is the very much a very peculiar aspects of our culture, peculiar aspects of our country, because so variations on hundreds of the costumes, hundreds of the music and dance, different forms. But even then, the people now, and they are the strongly attached with this bond, and despite there is a unity and there is a national feeling exists in our country. So now this is the so students, we are going to express this. First of all, let's see what is the social institution creates a strong collective identities. Social institutions, now the family, caste, creed, kinship, these are the social institutions, and these social institutions now creates a very strong and strengthens the social cohesion, or these creates the strong identities, a strong collective identity. We all are the adjoined, or we all are the associated with a very collective identity we have the, and this collective identity is the very strong, and now and thus and because, and this creates a social cohesion. On the other hand, this strong identity, the identities, our social identities, social institutions now creates the strong identities, or these strong identities now the makes the social cohesion. And moreover, on the other hand, the very same institution can be the source of inequalities and exclusion. This same institutions is a source of the inequalities, or the source of the exclusion or the discrimination, as we have studied in our previous chapter. How these social institutions, on the one hand, social institutions now creates a very strong social cohesion, and other hand, it's also give birth to the discrimination. It also now source of the discrimination. It is the also source of the exclusion or the inequalities which are the existing in the society. Here the two sides we see that the social institutions now express the it had the two branches and two sides. One side creates the cohesion, a strong bond. Other side creates the discrimination and inequalities and the exclusion in the society. Now we see here, and moreover, a discussion will be on particularly in this chapter, and we are in this topic. For this topic, we are going to study about the tension and the difficulties. Tension and difficulties. Particularly, this chapter will mention the tension and the difficulties associated with the cultural diversity. How the tension and difficulties exist in a country with these cultural diversities. Now, India like country, understand, and the other country of the world have its cultural diversities, differences and diversities. Okay, and these diversities are how the creates the tension and as well as the difficulties. How the government relies and state now relies, and a state now makes the efforts to make the cohesion, to make the integration, to make the assimilations of this different culture. Now this is this topics, under this topic we are going to study about the culture, and moreover meaning of cultural diversities and why it is the seen as a challenge. First of all, we shall see that what is the meaning of the cultural diversities. Okay, first thing. Second, why it is seen as the challenge. First, how the cultural diversities are existing, and how this is becomes a very much a challenge to our government and challenge to our society. This is the, when we say that India is a nation, for example, there is a term diversity. First of all, let's see, term emphasizes the difference. Diversities means differences, differences in terms of the language, differences in terms of the religion, differences in terms of the costumes, differences in terms of the geographical setups, differences in terms of the climate. Many differences now exist in the society in all respect. Economic differences, social differences, cultural differences we find here. And now these differences, rather than the inequalities or inequality, this is the what? This is the differences. Diversity is what? Now diversity is the differences, or it is the, rather than the inequality. Now this is not emphasizes, diversity does not emphasize on the inequalities. No, this emphasizes on the differences. Here it is the natural that there is a differences in the society, and when we say that India is a nation of a great cultural diversity, it is the fact that India is what? India is a nation of the great diversities, and the nation of the diversity, we mean that there is a many different types of the social groups, and it is the also know that we know that there are different types of the social groups in India. Now I have to say lots of differences and social groups exist in India. I have not to say much about that groups and the communities living here, and there are communities now here we see defined by the cultural markers, and each community has its own cultural marker. Okay, each community have its own cultural markers, means the different community exists in our country, and different cultures have its own marker, cultural marker. They have means that in culture of Rajasthan, culture of the backwards, culture of the forwards, culture of the Bengal, culture of the Bihar, culture of this, all are the mark. These all cultures, cultural or the differences are the marked by the a cultural marker is the marked by the differences, and moreover, such as, and these cultures, how do mark culture? How do we now fix it and determine the boundary of a culture? How do we distinguish the culture? In what respect? First, language. Now language, religion. By the religion, we now make the difference of the culture through the language, through the sect, through the races, and through the caste. Through these language, religion, caste, understand, races, through these and sect, through these we make the demarcation of the culture. We make and we have the marker of the language, marker through the marker of language, through the marker of the marker of the caste. Through that we now try to make the difference of the culture. And here, when these diverse communities are also part of a larger entity, or these different diverse communities are the part of the larger entity like the nation, and these all in our country, understand, different cultures exist, different people having their own culture, whether living in different provinces of our country. Now if they have a larger entity, they have their bond, a national bond also. They are the adjoined, they are the now incorporated in the national bond, and this national bond and also part of the entity, the nation, and then difficulties may be the created by the competition or the conflict between them. And now these are the differences. But when the problem arises, when the difficulties arises now, because when this different culture and the people belonging to the different culture now get into the competition, they get into the competition, they now just do the competitions among them, and as well as conflict. So a conflict is began. A conflict begins amongst them. Understand? When they now get down for the competition, what about their interest, about their strong identity, about their dominance, for their superiority, for their economic strength and interest. When this culture, people belonging to the different culture come into the competition and do the competition, now the conflict starts. Conflict begins. From there the conflicts begin. And now, moreover, these conflicts, this is why the cultural diversities can present a tough challenge, or this is the reason, and this is the why the cultural diversity represents a tough challenge to a nation. When the different cultural people belongs to the different culture now gets into the competition for their interest, for their dominance, for their power, for their interest, whatever they came into the conflict. This conflict creates the strong conflicts now, creates the strong competitions and a strong challenge, and the difficulty arises from the fact that cultural identities are very powerful, or we know that why the difficulties began. Now the cultural identity is very strong. We all belong to the certain culture, but towards your culture, for their culture, there is a strong feeling, a strong bond, a strong emotional attachment. Understand? We everyone has, and these identities are very strong and powerful, and they can arouse the interest, and this strong attachment, powerful attachment, arouses interest, interest, able to mobilize large number of the people, and these strong attachment, understand, these can mobilize uh, powerful attachment, passion, or the interest, intense passion, or the other interest or passion. Now these are the able to mobilize a larger community together. This mobilized a larger community together, and these are the numbers of the people. Sometimes cultural differences are accompanied by the economic and the social inequality. Sometimes these cultural differences are accompanied by the economic and the social inequalities in the society. This and now inequality, and this further complicates the things, and particularly this further complicates the things in our country. Take the example of that. Now the Dalit culture and the upper class culture. So what happens? This Dalit and sorry, this Dalit and the this Dalit's culture and there is a difference. There is economic inequality. There is economic differences, and the exclusion is there. Social inequality, economic inequalities. It creates a strong differences, or make the things more complicated, makes the challenge more complicated. How this is. And moreover, measures to address the inequalities and the justice. Now, although the measures are taken to address and to measures are taken to the address and make it a address to inequality or injustice suffered by one community can provoke opposition from the other communities. Now the measures, if the measures are taken and they addressed to inequality and injustice suffered by one community, can provoke the opposition from other communities. Understand? So this now provoked if their in their differences or their inequalities or injustice are addressed, then the other communities becomes the more just adamant and the more provocative, and because the situation is made worse when the scarce resources, and the situation becomes the rather worse when the scarce means scarce resources, whatever the resources like the river waters, like the jobs of the government funds have to be the shared. The here the have to be the share. So now this if the government address this problem inequalities, differences, economic and the social differences address, so now this provokes the tension and more complications, complications to the other groups, and as a result what happens now the and this may be the whether in the jobs conditions. Here very simple example, you can say that the reservation has been made done by the government of India, but we see that is certainly and sometimes the upper classes community reacts about that. Understand? Now in the jobs conditions their position is now being hampered. Understand? Their qualities or the merit is being hampered or being denied. Understand? So now this creates a provoked a conflict. As the government addressed to their problem, the problem of the Dalit and the other backward class, the upper class now becomes the very provocative and the provocative. So the river waters, job condition or the funds, the government policy and programs and the funds have to be the share, where these different people belonging to the different culture now come into the conflict for their share in that. And moreover, there are the seem to be the so many divisive forces in our country, so many divisive forces now hard at the work and the tearing apart the unity and the integrity of the, and these differences and many the divisive forces are involved and the working in our country for tearing out and tearing apart the unity and integrity of our nation. Whatever the integrity of or unity of the nation is threatened by these divisive forces. And what the where they took the shelters, what they want to win the heart of their people of their own cultures, and want to break down and want to want to disintegrate the country, want to divide the country. Understand? So now this kind of the big threats is standing before the government of India, and not only the government of India, wherever in the different parts of the world. And now one thing is that, or there here the communal rights, these tensions or the community differences or the diversities are expressed in the communal rights, demands for regional autonomy. These are the expression, a very ugly form, a ugly face of this communalism and the cultural diversities. These are the negatively these are the, when these differences go in the hands of, fall in the hands of the disintegrating forces, in the hands of the divisive forces. So then after what happens? This happens now, communal rights happens. Moreover, the demands for regional autonomy, caste wars start and begins. And moreover, he might have even felt that upset that large section of our population are not being now patriotism, or this is the reason that the large section of the people in our country never feel the patriotic feeling. They have no feelings of the patriotism and don't seem to feel the intensely for the India, and they don't think about they have no concern about the Indian issues or about the India. Understand? This is the reasons that these cultural differences and the divisive forces, understand, they think, and they, in the confinement of their culture, within the boundary of their culture, and and try to represent the strong strength of their cultural strength and dominate. So that now this ultimately leads leads towards the faction of the nation, towards the division of the nation, division of the country. Now this is the, and moreover, communalism and the regionalism, these are the major problem before the these are the challenge of the cultural diversity. Communalism, regionalism are not, these are the not a new issue. Understand? For a long time, for the decades, these issues, communalism and regionalism, are the existing in our country, and all major divisive problems are existing since the independence and before it. These all major problems are existing since the independence. Some are, and some are the before the independence. These problems are existing in our country, and moreover, despite that India has survived as a nation, despite these vociferous forces, despite these breaking forces, still despite that India is standing as a strong, emerging as a strong nation. But the strong nation states today, and moreover, despite the existing of the regional autonomy, strong regional autonomy, and communalism, casteism, even then India has emerged a very strong nation states in our in the world. One of the nation states in our world, India has emerged as this, and moreover, cultural cultural communities and the nation states. Let's see, cultural communities and the nation states. What is the nation states? I would like to question you all the students. What is the nation states? Which is called? What is the difference between states or a nation states? What is the difference? Anybody from you? What is the difference between state and nation states? Anybody from you? Nobody is replying. Yes? States or nation states, what is the difference? Here is a hyphen. Nation states and the state. State and nation state. What is the difference? Which country can be called as a nation states? Anybody from you? Nobody. Okay. Yes, somebody. I don't know. Who is testing and who is replying this? I can't see you. Okay. Let's see. Here the relationship between the nation states and the communities. Now we know very well. India is a nation states. And the first of all, the feelings of nation states began from where in Europe? Feeling the modern nation states, formation of the modern nation states began from where in the world? Yes. Somebody is telling, I realize. Somebody is replying, I have a perception of that. If somebody is realizing. In which country? Of the Europe, the first building of the nation state began in the world. Anybody from you? Amongst you? The first building of the nation state began. Process of building of nation states, first modern nation states. Yes. From French Revolution. Now we know very well, in a state, understand, there are different communities, hub of the communities, understand, different communities, how these different communities exist in a state, and what is the relation between a state and in the different communities and their existence, and in what way they express their feelings towards the nation, towards the state. We have to be discussing the relationship between the nation states and the community. Why is it so important for people to belong to a communities based on cultural identities? Why this is the very important? A person belonging to a cultural, having a cultural identity and having a cultural bond and the belongings. Why this is the very important? The first question is here, like the caste, ethnic group, everyone is belonging, caste, any caste, ethnic group, region or the religion. Why is so much passion aroused? Why we are so strongly, we have the strong bond and a strong attachment and the passion aroused when there is a perceived threat, when our culture, our community is in threat. So a strong feelings aroused when our community is, our culture is in threat or insulted, or injustice is done or to one's community. Why we became so passionate, so unrest, upset to preserve and to protect our culture, to protect our anything in form of religion, in form of our cultural identity. When why do these passions pose problem for a nation state? But this passion, if too much, and two, this also becomes a great and big threat to the nation also. And this passion can now break the nation into the different parts, the small parts. This passion, it means that these communities could and can demand for a separate nation and the separate state. So one hand, this community is enriched and assimilated together and makes the nation very stronger, and it's a heritage, very rich heritage. But other hand, remember, this can could be the proved to be the as a vociferous, as the breaking force for a nation states. Two sides it's had. Understand? So now here we are going to see that the importance of community identity. Now we all belong to the community, no doubt. Undoubtedly, we all belong to. So now why? The question is that why this is the importance for us? We belong to any community. Now every human being needs a sense of a stable identity to operate in this world, to exist and to operate in this world, we must have an identity. We all seek and belongs to, must have our identity. We seek our identity in this world. Identity in this world. First, like the question I have already wrote. Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Understand this question. Understand, this is the question which makes everybody aware, makes and everybody discovers his past, his background, his origin. Who am I and where I am studying? Understand? So now this is a very question for on the part of every individual in this world. And now he seeks his own culture. And now because he had a very strong bond, strong, everyone seeks their identities. And now one thing is, how am I different from the others? Now he compares how he is different from the others, and moreover, how do the others understand and comprehend me? How the others comprehend and now mirrorize his identities, mirrorize his identity or her identities. How others now refer in the mirror of others, how their identity reflects. Now this is the question. What goals and the aspirations should I have? And belonging to a community, what the goals one has, he or who has, what the goals he has to achieve, and he has to what the role he has to be play, being as a part of the community, as a part of the community. Now constantly crop up in our life right from childhood. This question continuously and constantly crop up in our life right from our childhood. We are able to answer many of these questions, and we answer many of these questions. How? Because the way in which we are socialized or the taught, in the way in which we are socialized, and our socialization happened where? In the lap of the family, in the lap of society, in the cradle of society. We have been socialized, and most of the questions now answered in these cradles, right from the infants to the grown-ups and the youths. Understand? Then after we can reply, who am I? Understand? And what is our cultures? And what is their identity? What my identity is? If one is able to respond this and the taught our immediate families, our community in the various senses, and these replies comes, and already these replies comes from his community. He is able to reply his identity from community, from the caste and the cultures to which he or she belongs to. Understand? So now this is a question before an individual. Understand? And moreover, students, the next topic I shall discuss in the later class. Okay, time is about to up. Okay.